Welcome back. This is the Come Get Some. I'm your host, Blake Williams. I'm here with Mr. Come Get Some himself, Gregg Williams. We have another big, exciting victory week after another big-time AFC battle, another win versus an AFC playoff team. We've so far this year, the Browns have played. Off the top of my head, if the playoffs started today, I think five different total playoff teams, if you count the 49ers over in the NFC,
right,
and have beat them all. And have beat them all with a different quarterback, and so that's cool. That's big to see. We got a big show for you today. We've got some great guests on. We've got longtime offensive coordinator in the NFL, Greg Roman, on to talk about Joe Flacco and talk about the Browns, having both coached Joe Flacco at the Ravens and coached against the Browns so much, and kind of what he's seen. We've got one of our favorite old players from back in the day, Frank Wycheck, unfortunately passed away unexpectedly this week, in the longtime tight end of the Titans Oilers. And so we've got the 30-year strength coach and assistant head coach Steve Watterson on to talk about them. But real quick, let's talk about our 3 cents. We know, like we say, it's an inflationary time right here, so I'm going to get your 3 cents instead of your 2 cents. What was your 3 cents from the game and takeaways yesterday?
Well, my 3 cents is this. First, the turnovers irritated me. Had we not turned the ball over 3 times, it's not even a contest. Mm-hmm. And we turned them away once, but the other 2 of the 3 times, we end up giving up touchdowns on those drives. Those are killers, and we've got to make sure we're protecting the ball better. We lead the National Football League in turnovers offensively, mm-hmm. and we've got to get rid of those, okay? It's a field position game. It's a point-producing game. Get rid of them, all right? It wouldn't even been close. Second, I do believe that they had more of a physical presence in the run game, more downhill runs, although they were trying to get on the edge quite a bit. But the more downhill runs you're going to have and have success against those, you're going to see the teams have to restrict the field more, play better force, and then you can get outside of them. The trick plays were minus. That's good because the trick plays get on my nerves. But I also like the fact that Kevin and the group came up with a package for DTR, okay, on short yardage, and even had him down in the red zone a snap or 2. And I thought those were good because that's another presence that you have to play in utilizing all of your guys on defense, because this guy's just not going to hang around the pocket. Okay, he's going to run the ball, and he did pretty well.
No doubt. So personnel packages and using your personnel over trick plays, right? Make teams have to prepare for every human being that you have.
Can't be that simple.
Versus every potential trick you could possibly do. But we've got a great show for you. Stick in with us, because when we come back from these announcements, we're going to get into some big plays of the week. Welcome back to Come Get Some. I'm your host, Blake Williams, here with Mr. Come Get Some himself, Gregg Williams, and it's a great big victory week here. And I know a lot of the fans out there seem to be really interested right now in a lot of the intricacies of, say, what goes into these plays that they see on game day. What made this play happen? Why did this play happen, good or bad, and whatnot? And so this is a new segment of our show called the Big Play segment of the show, talking about and kind of breaking down some of the big plays. And there was a ton of big plays this past weekend in this game. And it's a big play league, and we talk about that all the time, right? I mean, we would chart that all the time, chart the explosive plays, right? Runs of over 10 yards or more, passes of 20 plus yards, and turnovers and big plays are probably, historically the 2 biggest, drivers of a success, or alluding to who's winning or losing, right? The turnover takeaway differential and the big play differential. And so some of the big plays that happened yesterday, let's talk about, first of all, the first touchdown. And so I'll let you touch on this first, right? I've been talking about this. What Stefanski's been going goal line personnel, right? No wide receivers, all tight ends, fullbacks, putting an extra offensive lineman at fullback, putting an extra offensive lineman at tight end, right? So 7 offensive linemen on the field. I mean, he's been doing that in the open field. What problems does that present for the defense when you're trying to play goal line, against goal line in the massive open field and all that space?
Big thing is, if you're going to bring big people in, Okay, so you're going to bring bigger players in, take off some of the DBs and stuff, but now the bigger players you brought in, can they play pass coverage? Can they do that? Because now there's more grass, there's more green, there's more area to cover. And then, okay, let's say you don't do that. Let's say you just go ahead and play a regular type thing and keep the DBs in. Well, they see you keep the DBs in, now they're just going to run over and truck them right in the face and run the football. They've done some really, really good jobs on how they have made that be a conflict in the opponents on how they're going to package against them.
No doubt. And that's and to the fans out there, there's a difference between personnel package that's in the game and then situation, right? And how the offense is determining the situation versus how the defense is determining. So for instance, us, we would call that a personnel package, like 23 personnel, 23, right? 2 running backs, 3 tight ends, right? That's how the number system works. But that wouldn't be goal line. Goal line is a situation for us. And so goal line would only be if they brought that personnel versus us from the 3-yard line in.
3-yard line in.
They bring that out on the 5-yard line. Lo and behold, the 35-yard line, situationally, that's not the goal line for us because there's too many things that can happen. And we wouldn't play it the way that Jacksonville played it. We wouldn't play it as goal line, right? So they played it as goal line, defending every blade of grass, where we say just because you can doesn't mean you should. The risk versus reward in that situation.
And
because,
as soon as we saw that, we're going, what are you doing?
And the last thing I'll talk about that right there, and I was so proud watching it. Remember, I pointed it out to you, which was Njoku, who caught the touchdown wide open and free, and what he did and showed me, him being a vet.
Finally.
Which was if you guys go back and watch that film, he looks at the left tackle and he's looking at his foot and he waits for the left tackle to reposition himself into his stance, and then he cheats his split down to get in a really tight, like we're getting ready to run the ball split.
Run block split.
Because what he used to do, if you watch when he first set his feet on that play and the tackle was kind of in a wide stance before he cheated his stance down, that would have been like a huge split, an abnormal split right there, a 2 or 3 foot split, and that tells you something's up. And what happens with a lot of tight ends, not even young tight ends, and it used to happen in practice with Njoku, was he's out there, he ain't thinking about run blocking, he's not thinking about doing any of this stuff because he's running a route, and so he's like,
and we knew every time.
Yeah, so he's like, screw it, I'm getting up there and getting myself in my stance, and I'm just getting up there and I'm thinking about run my route, don't drop the ball, blah blah blah, all that stuff, and he would do that, and Kirko and Shobes would who would be the 2 inside linebackers, would just look at him and point and be like, pass, they're passing.
It's pass, it's a pass.
And Kirko would just go stand literally over top of him and just cover him. There was no play action there. And you take that dilemma out of it for him. So that was a huge little nuance that you see right there. But let's talk about the next big play, sticking with offense, the 4th and 3, for the touchdown. The 4th and 3 for the touchdown. So you and I both watched it. So 4th and 3, first of all, 4th and 3, like what do you get ready to play conceptually? What are you probably getting ready yourself?
I'm getting ready to play sub personnel because I don't think you're going to stay big. We're going to be in some type of pass coverage.
Right, but I'm talking about the 4th and 3 touchdown later on at the end of the game. So it's 4th and 3, got to have it. What are you, Gregg Williams, probably going to be calling on defense? Blitz, and what kind of coverage? Man coverage.
No doubt.
And there's a lot of people in the league that are like that, right? And so that is what Stefanski was anticipating, and that's what he played for.
That's what he played for.
He played what's called a bunch concept, put 3 receivers together so that you could run these switch route concepts and try to pick and rub people off and get people confused. And you hope you have in that aggressive man coverage defense, you have this little window to real quickly throw the ball in for a first down. And the other great thing that he did about it was, it's one thing if you just line up statically there and you let the people say, hey, okay, this is, and communicate the 3 DBs, communicate how they're going to sort these 3 out. But he didn't. He started Bell out wide. Not in a bunch, not in a 3-man bunch, and then motioned him down and snapped the ball quickly.
Right there, he ID'd what
and not only an ID, but what he did was he didn't allow them to get into communication, right? So when all of a sudden he did that and came down, you see 2 guys ran with 1 guy, nobody on the other guy, right? And then the last part of that was, so it was a great play design and great anticipation by Stefanski, and then it was a great recognition by the quarterback Flacco on seeing it's cover 0, they have more guys rushing than we have to block. I know I'm going to have a free blitzer coming from over here. I know the timing it's going to take for this to open up, so I've got to fade away from this blitzer.
Retreat
to have enough time to throw the ball in there. And, hey, everything worked out perfect. Instead of just a first down, it was a busted coverage out the gate, for a big play there. And now switching gears to probably one of the last ones, and it was a controversial play, but one on defense. A controversial play because a lot of people out there are saying should Doug have gone for it on 2 points, right? And I think maybe a lot of people don't understand that's the math there is closer than you think it is.
It is.
And it's a little bit of opinion based. And usually why people would go for it there is because either they're an inferior team playing on the road, and or playing on short rest, which Jacksonville was, or you're super injured, and so you decide, hey, don't take it to overtime, limit the game, make it be decided right here in regulation. But that play right there on the 2-point conversion, where they were in the declaration formation, put the tight end out wide, knew they were in man-to-man, ran a perfect play for man-to-man. We just played it better than they did. You remember they came down, ran what everybody else runs in the league, which is a little double in and a 7 route. The first read is to the tight end, but we did not overrun it and play it with man leverage inside. We played it knowing the play and played it outside. And they did this awesome little pick route with the 2 guys inside, and I don't think I've ever seen this before. The receiver outside picked the guy. The DB had his back to him.
Okay, his back to him.
The other DB yelled, switch.
Yes, he did.
And the DB who was getting picked just head turned around and just grabbed the guy picking him, and the other guy fell off, and they zoned it. They zoned it verbally. I don't know how they did that over the loudness of the dog pound, but now all of a sudden, there's nowhere to go with the ball. Myles Garrett gets a great pass rush, and he gets a sack.
And put him down, but it was unbelievable.
But this brings us to our last part of this segment, the big playmakers of the game. The big playmakers of the game. There were so many there. But I think the ones that we wanted to shout out with this week were Joe Flacco. You got to give him his roses.
Him credit.
And he's got to keep playing that way. David Njoku.
I really was impressed with David,
and who I said here that I thought that he would be the one that would be maybe the biggest beneficiary of Joe Flacco being here.
I agree.
And how Joe Flacco's used tight ends throughout his time. Marty Emerson. Two huge interceptions, PBUs, big plays. And then Corey Bjorquez punting bombs from his own end zone, flipping the field. And then Dustin Hopkins, when we got the 2 best kickers in the league. Dustin Hopkins.
2 best, we've got them going, and the coaches are managing them well.
No doubt. Well, hey, stick with us right here. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit of around the league. Welcome back to Come Get Some. I'm your host, Blake Williams, with Mr. Come Get Some himself. And in our Around the League, we're going to talk about the AFC Playoffs picture. And the AFC Playoffs picture, which is very very jumbled up. Big time for the Browns to win that game this week. Big, they got an 81% chance of making the playoffs at this point. But right now, there are 11 teams in the AFC that are all 7-6 or better, including seeds 6 through 11 are all 7-6 or better. You got Baltimore, Miami, Kansas City, Jacksonville, and Cleveland that are all 8-5 or better and sitting fairly pretty right now. And then you've got Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, Houston, Denver, Cincinnati, and Buffalo. All tied at 7-6. And so out of those 11 right there, who do you think, G-Dub, who do you think, if you had to predict right now with 4 left to play, who do you think the 7 are going to be?
I will tell you this. I would not, sell Buffalo short.
Mm-hmm.
They've had some tough times, but I would say Buffalo right now can strike anybody out of there. And then with the way that the quarterback is playing at Cincinnati, I love the way he's playing. I will tell you what, those 2 teams, you better be look out. Yeah, they're going to have a chance.
Hey, I would agree with you on that standpoint. Cincinnati, I've told those stories about my brief time coaching in college ball. I was recruiting Folsom City High School, blue turf, like Boise State's turf, and I was like, who is that? This dude out there slinging it on the high school field, looking like Drew Brees, just reading defenses and cutting it up, and the coaches made the unpopular opinion to make him a starter as an underclassman and not start the senior like it was always done there. And he threw for 10 touchdown passes in his first high school game. And the head coach said that's why I started him, and his name was Jake Browning.
Yep.
And he went on to throw for about almost 300 yards in 3 years, or 300 touchdowns in 3 years of high school ball. But I would say this: I would agree with you on Buffalo. I'm going to give Denver the nod. So what I would put in Baltimore, Miami, Kansas City, Jacksonville, and Cleveland. I would take out Pittsburgh and Indianapolis, who are in now if it ended today, and I would put Denver and Buffalo in.
I will tell you this: I cannot argue with you with the way they fixed their defense. They have fixed their defense, and you and I have tremendous respect for Sean, on the offense, and Russell's is fitting in well with that. And with the way their defense is playing, I would not count them out.
I totally agree with you. And controversially, I'd say probably that I'm looking for Cleveland to take over the number 1 spot and Baltimore to fall back to the 5, because Cleveland, if you look at the next 4 games that Cleveland has versus the next 4 games that Baltimore has, that could happen. Hey, but stick with us right here. Speaking of Baltimore, because when we get back, we're going to be speaking with former Baltimore offensive coordinator Greg Roman about Joe Flacco and all things Browns. Welcome back into Come Get Some. I'm your host, Blake Williams. I'm here with Mr. Come Get Some himself, Gregg Williams. And it's another great victory week here in Cleveland with Browns fans. And we have a fun guest on, a great guest on today, joining us from Spain, no less. All right, so it's 6 hours ahead of us, but another Greg, longtime Baltimore Ravens and Buffalo Bills and San Francisco 49ers, offensive coordinator Greg Roman. Thank you for joining us today, my man.
Hey, before you get on, I'll let everybody know you're going to hear something nice from me, because you used to always be on the other sideline, and I'd be MFing you and yelling and screaming at you. You earn my respect in every place you've been, because you coach offense the way I coach defense, in that physical mindset, and I appreciate you so much, when I've seen the things that you have done, and I just hope a lot of other people don't copy you.
Hey, G-Money, I was MFing you too.
True, great story.
True.
But Greg, thank you for joining us. I know a hot button topic, here in Cleveland right now with Cleveland fans, is they're getting a chance to enjoy the opposite side of the aisle for the first time in a decade of the Joe Flacco experience. And so wanted to just get kind of your take on Joe Flacco, kind of what he was. I mean, obviously G-Dub and I were with him at the Jets, and he was more in a spot starter backup role. But how Joe is as a quarterback and a professional, and what makes him so good.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, I think everybody saw today. Yesterday was his 100th win as a starting quarterback, which puts him in the top 19 of all time.
Yep.
When you think about the history of the NFL, it's pretty remarkable. I really like Joe. He's got a great family. He's a great family guy. And Joe, I think it's really simple. You better hope he doesn't get hot, because if he gets hot, you're done.
No doubt.
And that's the thing. Like, if the Browns, yesterday was a great example. If they can orchestrate that, and if Joe can have that mindset that he's just got to find it. If he finds that mindset, then it'll be interesting seeing Joe go to Baltimore to play the Ravens in the playoffs, or Joe go wherever, to Kansas City. Because if he's got that mindset, and I know Stefanski's doing a great job of utilizing him, and the Browns defense is doing a phenomenal job. They're evolving. So, I mean, anything's possible, but Joe's done it. And I'm hoping for Joe that he finds that mindset, because when he's hot, you got no chance.
He's got a presence. He has a presence in the huddle. He has a presence on the sideline. He has a presence in the pocket. He's one of those players that I've coached against, gone after him a bunch, and he blocks you by his release. He blocks you by his presence and knowing that, hey, I understand the protection so much, I've got to get rid of the ball. I don't have that protection. Or if he sees an imbalance in a matchup, he knows he's got to speed up his process. I have so much respect for him, and you did a great job coaching him for a long time.
Yeah, and he's another guy that can make every throw look effortless. So honestly, it's really on the receivers, the Browns receivers, and Njoku. Get to the spot, and he will get you the ball. Just get separation, he'll get you the ball. And, if they can crank their game up a little bit, I think something special could happen.
Agreed.
Well, flipping gears slightly, from Flacco, but just schematically, this is something I've actually been talking about, up here and on socials this year, talking ball, but watching Stefanski and Bill Callahan, obviously puts together the run game due this year. But I said it reminds me back to going against you back even at the 49ers, when I was at the Rams, and playing goal line personnel in the open field.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember you guys used to do it, and you guys had, Vernon Davis and Delaney Walker, and I always, try to explain to people, I was like, from a defensive perspective, I mean, the amount of space that you're in, and you got guys like that, like an Njoku and whatnot, but just philosophically talk a little bit about playing goal line in the open field, what you liked about that process and why.
You used to always piss me off when you'd bring that 23 personnel out at the midfield, and here I go. It's 4th and 1, but it's 4th and 50. I understood. Go ahead.
Why do you think I did it?
I know. I know.
When I was at Stanford, for 2 years. It's kind of where I got my first chance, my opportunity to run an offense. And we had 7 tight ends in 2 years playing the NFL. So we had an abundance of tight ends. We had abundance of young offensive linemen. And in college, you can dress everybody. So it was a way of getting young offensive linemen experience before they had to go out there so they wouldn't be shell shocked. Started a ton extra tight end, extra O lineman in there. And then it became, well, what if we went unbalanced? And I wonder how the defense would like that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
You're bringing back on the field,
so many memories.
Play where we got 8 offensive linemen in the game in an unbalanced formation. Then we're back to 3 wides. The next play, then we're back to 2 tight ends.
Yep.
So it was just a means of trying to create as much for the defense to prepare for. But also, as you guys know, I mean, Greg, nobody did it better than you. Coaching is all about using your personnel and understanding your personnel. So I was always blessed to have some amazing tight ends. Like you look at Delaney Walker and Vernon Davis, 49ers. I mean, you're talking about guys that ran sub 4.4.
Yep.
And they could block a defensive end one-on-one.
Yep. So
it was an amazing conflict to present to the defense. And to me, it was counterculture. It was like nobody's, so let's do it. And
we're not getting reps against anybody else until you would do it.
Yep.
And that's managing your personnel is exactly right. After all these years, I have 42 different packages of defense, and now it shrinks down place by place by place wherever I go, and handling the personnel that's there. But you were one of the guys that we had to make sure we had everything up and ready to go because of how multiple you were as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, and it was all personnel driven, and guys like you that present so many problems. That's one of the reasons I think I've got all this gray hair.
You both
of us. I know.
3 hours of sleep a night.
Yep.
Didn't suit me well, but that's what it takes.
That's what it does. And the players and everybody else understands they can smell bull feces a long ways off, and they know how hard you prepare. They pay attention and want to please us because of how hard you work and how smart you are about utilizing the people. And we can be pretty hard on them because they know that we want them to be the best they could be.
Oh, for sure. And, it's our job to take them to a place they couldn't get to
Yep.
And that's what you've done. And we've all been blessed with some great players and relationships over the years. So, just I'm looking forward to doing that some more here in the near future.
Maybe we end up on the same staff someplace.
That would be scary.
People would come out just to watch practice.
That would be smash mouth right there for sure.
Well,
no doubt.
The other thing we really didn't touch on there. I was talking about, utilizing personnel, but let's face it, anybody that's done this for a long period of time understands that you're going to have a better defense when your offense has a physical mindset.
Mm-hmm. You betcha.
Your offense when your defense has a physical mindset.
Yep.
It's iron sharpening iron. And I've been on several teams, especially when I was starting out as a coach, where, they would talk about it, but they really wouldn't do it. And, all these words, but are you really being physical? Are you giving your players a chance? Are you teaching them techniques to be physical? And as well as I do, over the course of 4 quarters in a game, it makes a big difference. And over the course,
and you're one of the best, my man.
No doubt. No doubt. I mean, that's what it's all about. That's what Smash Mouth AFC North December and January football is all about and it's going to be about. But we'll let you get back to your vacation there in Spain. Appreciate you, my man. Good luck. Travel safe, and hope to see you when you get back.
Well, that's great, and thanks a lot, guys. Have a great one.
Hey, we will, and tell your wife that I appreciate her for putting up with you all this time.
Stick with us. Welcome in to Come Get Some. I'm your host, Blake Williams. I'm here with Mr. Come Get Some himself, Gregg Williams. And had some rough news yesterday, right? We saw, and I think we all saw, the NFL world saw that one of our favorites from back in the day, Frank Wycheck, unfortunately and unexpectedly passed away this past week. And Frank Wycheck, the longtime tight end, for the Houston Oilers, Tennessee Titans days. And we're joined by one of our great friends, longtime head strength coach and assistant head coach, and like a godfather to me, somebody that I grew up with, but from the old Houston Oilers and Tennessee Titans for 30 years. Steve Watterson, thank you for joining us today, brother.
Great to be here, especially with you guys.
You're like a brother to me, and everybody knows how messed up I am, and anytime I need to tell them, I am not even close to being as messed up as you are.
Guys, if you want to know about the relationship, go get yourself, go down to Redbox and go rent yourself a copy of Step Brothers.
That is it. Which one's Will Ferrell?
Yeah, no doubt.
Oh
yeah.
You've had to live with them.
Oh yeah.
He said you had to live with them.
I only had him as a roommate for 10 years.
Yeah. And all
That's
those
true.
roommate stories. Oh my gosh. We can't even go on. Now podcasts, they wouldn't be able to publicize all the things that went on with that.
No. Politically correctness
No.
never was either one of our fortes.
No
doubt. That was, things are so different now, obviously. Those were just such different days. You go away to training camp, small little colleges, you're together for so much longer. Some of those days were even a little bit pre-free agency, so you kept guys together longer. But talking about Frank, and remember Frank, Steve, what's the first memory or, the most memorable memory that comes to mind when you think of Frank and you think of your times with him?
I don't think there's a single guy that wouldn't say about their first impression of Frank was, what a good dude. I met him.
Dude.
He came from Washington. Things didn't quite work out the way I'm sure he would have liked to. But I got to tell you now, from the first day in the room, he came in quiet, went about his work, but it didn't take long before that awesome personality and just, like I say, some people make a mark with their loudness and their stamping and pouting and bringing ish. Frank made his stamp by just being, what do we say, Greg? Bring your work.
Bring your work. That's exactly right. And you know what? And he looked at everybody's in the eyes, and he was a person that you and I quickly said, wow, how honest is he? I mean, he lives exactly the same way. I kept on telling him, that if he keeps on dropping his nuts every once in a while, I'll find a place on defense to play him too.
Yeah, and he'd have done it, and nobody was harder on themselves than he was.
Yep, I agree.
I mean, you had to almost work him through a single mistake, a single drop. He really took everything that you did. I know for me in the weight room training, you were never going to get him to quit. No. But on the same hand, if he didn't quite get what he thought he should have on testing, or if he didn't quite get the speed that he wanted or the weight that he wanted to gain, I mean, he was tougher on himself than any of us could have been.
He's meticulous, and he was competitive, and he was one of the classic people I talk about. Can you be the best you can be every day? Don't worry about somebody else that you think you're trying to pass as a world record or whatever. Just, can you be the best you can be? And his picture is in the dictionary for that. He pushed himself to be his best every single day.
Yeah. Both Munchak had it on the wall going into the meeting room when he became the head coach. Bruce lived it. Be a pro.
Be a pro.
And what the definition was.
Yep.
Know your job and do it.
Yep.
I mean, that's like, those were such my formative years, and it's crazy when you think back to it, because I mean, like, those were like, that team was such the it was just the ideal for me of like what a team was like, right? I mean, I think maybe in that time, and even like nowadays, maybe as well too, like there's this I guess this misnomer of like offensive players being prima donnas and soft or whatever, but like you just didn't have that. I mean, that team was built around the big three. Who we've already had Eddie George on the show, this season, and then unfortunately the other two have passed away. Steve McNair and Frank Wycheck, and then that defense. Mm-hmm. But those big three on offense were as tough and physical and like just warrior. I mean, played through just ridiculous injuries and whatnot as probably anybody that I was ever around.
Yep. Yeah.
Got to throw Matthews in there.
Yep, Bruce Matthews. I mean, same thing. Yep.
And Munchak too. Before we ever moved, he's up there coaching and everything. And as you brought back memories of that immediately to me, I enjoyed you being around those guys. I always worried when you hung out in the weight room and all of a sudden you were with him. I had no idea what I was going to have to deal with at home that night. That you guys are trying to bust me some way.
Oh my God.
You got, if he who giveth has to taketh.
Oh my gosh!
And it was always a learning experience. But that was the sanctuary of those teams. And I mean, Frank was such a, just a big personality. I mean, that's what I remember. Like you said, I mean, he wasn't this boisterous, flamboyant, but he let you know on game day, and he was a worker. I mean, I remember I was a kid, right? So not a little kid. I was a middle schooler and a high schooler. But I mean, I remember fishing in his backyard, right? I mean, he was our next door neighbor down the street and playing, Saturday PlayStation tournaments and all of those things, and whipping around in his Viper, and those which he had bought from Bubba McDowell, a former one of his teammates.
That's right.
But what do you think? What did Frank mean to those teams? Like, what do you think he meant to those teams? And his teammates.
He was perfect standard. He was the standard of like being a pro. Like you say, he didn't talk a lot. He did his job, and I think his teammates so respected his attention to getting things done. He was a coach pleaser because he was naturally a pleaser, and he was a great teammate because he would be willing to be the brunt, but never really wanted to be the one to give out a lot of the flack or the shenanigans we would all.
Yeah, he could definitely take it.
No doubt
Yep.
about it. He could take it. But the other thing, too, was his pictures in the dictionary about when you say do your job. When we would present, whether it was you or any of us present what we expected of him, what we wanted him to do, right then, you didn't have to follow up on it. It wasn't one of these people you thought you were going to have to babysit. You knew you had to say it to him one time, and he would get the job done. He was amazing that way.
Yep.
Well, obviously, we were remiss not to talk about this, but obviously the moment that lives in legend, the Music City Miracle. But I know we were all three there on that sideline that day. I think you can see, you go back and watch the video, and you can see Brandon Fisher and I's little red,
you guys are running down
our
the
little
sideline.
red sock caps as ball boys running way out of the box, down the sideline, chasing Kevin Dyson. But talk a little bit about that play and what that stadium was like that day, and felt like, and everything about it.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I'll be the first one to say that I get the dumbass award. The play goes.
Thank you for saying that, because I was going to bring it up.
I figured I beat you. Right there, as you know, I was fortunate enough to be able to just babysit back in the back where the returners were, and so you practice that play over and over and over, and so Gregg being one of the best special teams coach in the history of the league, and I say that affectionately. I hate to even admit it.
That's hard.
Your teams all broke. You were very sensitive to the repetitions, knowing Alan Lowry was going to repeat it. We ended every Friday practice with it, right?
Yep.
And I'd be mad at the guys because they'd be horse playing. And I remember getting really upset one time with Joey Kent and Derek. And Derek came up and grabbed me by the neck because he knew I was getting red in the face. He goes, "Come on, coach. Relax. You know we're never going to run this play."
Mm-hmm. How about that?
So how the story goes is when that went off and everybody's uptight and I'm squeezing my little chops and up again, look across and I see Byron, right? The official on the sideline.
Yep.
Putting it, and now I'm supposed to know this stuff. I'm supposed to know about the time and when we should call timeout, when we go for two, because I got all the shots. And all of a sudden, I see the official put that hand and start waving it behind his back. And I'm thinking like, oh, hell. He's calling it a illegal pass.
You were so stupid.
I'm like, oh, dang. And I'm watching all the way into the end zone. Like, oh, I'm saying so. And everybody else is cheering and screaming. I'm still like, oh, man, they just haven't called that.
And you asked me, you had the audacity, what does this mean?
What does this signal
I'm
mean?
like, wait a second. I told you, I said, the official just put his hands behind back. And you go, you dumb.
Yeah, I said, you dumb whatever I said. Yeah.
He said, that's a lateral.
It's a lateral. It was a legal play.
Oh. Man,
it was great and all-time greatest. It was a fantastic play, and it's an unbelievable memory we've all shared together. And it's one of the greatest moments ever. Besides the one time, that we tried to do a tight end pass with him, and he ended up crapping his pants on that one, and he couldn't wear his white uniform pants anymore because he had crap hanging out of him. And oh my gosh,
So it is. You talk about fans out there that are watching this show. You have to realize we coaching those guys, the players play, but at the end of the day, we are all fans.
All of us.
We are fans for each other.
Yep.
We are fans for the game. We are fans and cheering big plays. So when you guys get excited at home watching on TV, we are just as nuts on the side.
No doubt.
And when we see our kids on the sidelines and they're celebrating, and we're looking up in the stands maybe to a wife, we do that.
Yep.
We pick up there to a loved one because something great just happened.
I couldn't say it. I couldn't say it better myself. No doubt. I mean, that's that's what it is. That's what it is. And I think these are the important and the cathartic things, sometimes when unfortunately, our friends, or like our loved ones, like brothers, pass. But I think this is how we keep that legacy, alive and keep that going by, laughing and telling the fun old stories,
Yep.
just like we would do when we get together when they were still living.
Yep.
Yep.
Same way.
I mean, we still, when we get together at the players' reunions, Frank was iconic because of who he was.
Mm-hmm.
Great player, phenomenal. That's why he's in the Ring of Honor. Also a great guy. But, the fact is, we cheered for each other. And when good things happened to good guys, they were just a little more special.
Yep.
I know that sounds corny, but it's the fact. When somebody like Frank, something good happened or he was a part of good, you almost say, yeah, that's who those type of things are supposed to happen for.
It makes us all cheer for that same person. We all love those kinds of people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I got to say this. Tight ends have always been, Munch and Bruce and Lyman may take exception to me saying this, but the fact is I have always taken exception to tight ends. They usually, the yes men, they just go about their business across the board. They work extremely hard, professional, whether it's a Delaney Walker or my last king of the tight ends who I just absolutely loved was Craig Stevens, and he was just so much like Frank Wycheck. They're the guys that would be on your special forces team.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And but they're also they're the quietest. They have the most unique senses of humor across the board because they know it's about the team. It's the team that matters. It's not their ego. They're not selfish.
Mm-hmm.
They know they have a role to play. And so many times the role seemed almost impossible. A block, a technique that needed to be used. And they didn't question it. They just found a way to do it. Would you agree with that?
You know
Well,
what? And you have told me that so many times, and thank goodness, I'm letting everybody else know you like them because they were one of the few that wouldn't give you all kinds of static in the weight room.
That's why I liked them.
I know.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate you. I appreciate you jumping on here and talking with us and reminiscing a little bit about Frank. Loved you and the family. Miss you, my man, and hope to see you soon.
Same thing, Steve.
First of all, both you guys, you're like my brother, and you are like my godson. I love you both. And if any guys, any Titans, Oiler players are watching this, Thursday night, Zach Pillar's place in Franklin. We're getting everybody together. Zach called me today, asked me to put the word out. So I've texted about 70 guys that are still around town, coaches, etc. And we're going to get together at Zach Pillar's Bar and Grill called Neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just to commemorate Frank, just to get together to put it in perspective. So love you guys.
That's
Love you
huge,
too,
man.
and
That's huge. Thank
That's
you very
who
much. You got to
are.
do that.
Thank you, Steve.
Love you.
Love you.
See you later. Thank you for tuning in to Come Get Some. We've had a great show for you this week. This is our Pay That Man His Money segment. And a guy that we've been talking a lot about there, Mr. Irrelevant. It's funny that we're not even through year 2 of Mr. Irrelevant, but Brock Purdy. And I think Trent Williams, you heard it.
Yep.
Trent Williams did as good a job as I've ever heard another player stand up an advocate for another player. And that tells you something when Trent Williams talked about Brock Purdy after this game this past week. But do you think he's a legitimate MVP candidate and should be considered an MVP candidate up there with Dak Prescott and some of the
The
others?
success of what they're doing as a team drives and goes through the quarterback. And yes, I do. He continues to play this way, and he gets them to where they want to be is. That's because of the quarterback that they haven't had to be able to do that.
No doubt. And people who want to say he's a system quarterback, there's been a lot of other quarterbacks that have played in that system since Kyle's been there that haven't played the position the right way and haven't played it like this. And so he's something different. So pay that man. But hey, thank you very much. We got a big week ahead playing Chicago in the race. Send us home, G-Dub.
All right, let's get ready to roll. Ready, break.